What's up, everyone, and welcome back to Cinematic Reviews. I'm, of course, your host, Chris, and this is a show about all things movies and TV. I got another awesome episode for you today. I'll be reviewing Gladiator 2. This is the sequel to Ridley Scott's masterpiece, Gladiator, that came out back in 2000. If you want to check out my review of that, go over to youtube.com/the Cinematic Reviews or listen to it on your favorite podcast service such as Spotify, Amazon Music, and Apple Podcasts. I had a lot of fun finally reviewing that movie. It's one of my favorite movies of all time, probably the favorite movie of all time. But this one was surprisingly good as well. But before I get into that, let's head over to news and reactions. So I jotted down a couple of headlines that I thought were interesting to bring up on the show today, along with two reactions, one for a movie and one for a TV series that is currently going on right now. You could probably guess what those two are. But first, let's go over a couple bits of news here. So pertaining to this episode in particular, the Gladiator episode, Ridley Scott is currently writing the story or script, however you want to call it, for Gladiator 3. I think it's marked in pre-production right now. There's no release date or anything like that. Ridley Scott is attached to it for now. No word on the cast, if Paul Mescal is coming back or if anybody else has been cast in this role. But the Ridley Scott is currently working on Gladiator 3. Also, we just had the big Star Wars celebration this past couple weeks, where a bunch of project announcements were revealed to Star Wars fans, such as Star Wars Starfighter, which is starring Ryan Gosling. We also got some teasers for the Mandalorian and Grogu film, which will be bringing back Pedro Pascal, as the Mandalorian, along with his little sidekick Grogu. Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau, of course, will be involved in that. We also got confirmation that Hayden Christensen will be coming back as Anakin Skywalker in the second season of Ahsoka. We also got a reveal of Sam Witwer voicing Darth Maul again in his own series. What else was there? There was a bunch of other animated shows coming to Disney Plus. I'm sure there's another one related to like Young Jedi Adventures and the Star Wars Tales, which has been pretty popular in Disney Plus. I think that's pretty much it from what I recall. We had a bunch of famous members of the Star Wars community, like Hayden Christensen showed up at the celebration. Rosario Dawson, who plays Ahsoka, showed up. Dave Filoni, Pedro Pascal, a bunch of other people. I don't normally follow the Star Wars celebration. I normally just kind of watch the highlights of it later on after the celebration and get some of the more of the highlights of it, I guess is the best way to say it. You know, the titles of projects, cast reveals, things like that. I'm a huge Star Wars like nerd, but the celebration just isn't something I tune into every year. I just kind of get the highlights afterwards. So be on the lookout for those. I believe a teaser trailer for The Mandalorian and Grogu will be coming out here very, very shortly, since that is going to be released in theaters next year. We'll also be getting some other reveals too, I'm sure, with like the rest of the cast for Ahsoka. More cast announcements for Ryan Gosling Star Wars film, along with the new trilogy that is rumored to be coming out, continuing the episodes, and of course Rey's next film. I believe it's the new Jedi Order is what they call it. So we should be seeing more Daisy Ridley coming in to the future. So a lot of stuff for Star Wars, such as Andor season 2 is now streaming on Disney Plus as well. So that is the current Star Wars thing going on. I will, of course, be doing a review on that. That'll take a little bit of time, since that is 12 more episodes. I typically wait until the entire series is streamed and able to watch. So that'll be at a way later date into the schedule, but I will be doing a review episode for Andor season 2, and then I will also be releasing the review for the rewatch of Star Wars Episode 3: Revenge of the Sith, which is currently in theaters tonight. I think is the first night for that. But I will be doing a special release episode of that on May 4th, which I believe is next Sunday. So kind of mark your calendars for that. But that'll be another rewatch that I'll be doing on the show. I'm super excited for that. But yeah, that's kind of the world of Star Wars right now. Switching over, we had a big piece of news with the Marvel Universe pertaining to another Pedro Pascal project, and that is Fantastic Four First Steps. They are currently doing reshoots. Nothing that I could find on as to what they're reshooting. I know there's some rumors going around or speculations that maybe they're trying to squeeze in Robert Downey Jr.'s Doctor Doom in there to kind of link it between the Avengers film. Or maybe it's just some CGI stuff that they need to figure out. But the film is still on track to release in time for the July 25th. Again, I'll be doing a big Fantastic Four season for that. We'll be doing the first two Chris Evans Fantastic Four films, followed by the Miles Teller Michael B. Jordan film that came out in 2015, and then this will lead into the fourth episode of that season, which will be the First Steps, starring Pedro Pascal, Vanessa Kirby, and Joseph Quinn, who is also in Gladiator 2, along with Pedro. So awesome time to be a Marvel fan as well. And then a couple of reactions I want to talk about. As you probably know, you've seen all those clips of the Minecraft movie going around, especially those when the cops got involved with some rowdy kids during a couple scenes of that. No cops were called in my showing, unfortunately, but I surprisingly did enjoy Minecraft. It's a video game that I'm not too familiar with. I can't recall really ever spending a significant time playing with it. But the movie itself was pretty fun. It's really funny. Jack Black is kind of at the center of it and doing his Jack Black things, which is great. Jason Momoa is always in there. He's pretty funny as kind of the dumb, witty video gamer. I didn't really recognize any of the other cast, but overall, I enjoyed the movie. It was really fun. It was kind of steered more towards like hardcore fans of the Minecraft universe. But for people like me who have no idea what's going on, I still had a lot of laughs. It was still fun. So check out Minecraft today in theaters, and then I'm sure it'll hit some kind of streaming service. I can't remember. It might be a Universal film, so it'll probably be on Peacock. But yeah, go check out Minecraft. Go support that film. It was pretty funny. Another reaction, and that is The Last of Us Season 2. I'm really loving this season. We've only had the 2 episodes, but they're 2 really big episodes, especially this past weekend's episode. I won't spoil anything just in case you haven't seen it or you haven't played the video games, but it's really leading into a really great season of TV. I'll be doing a review of that. I just added it to the schedule last minute. So when all 6 or 7 episodes release, I'll be doing a review episode on that as well. But yeah, check out The Last of Us. Both seasons 1 and 2 are now streaming on Max today. So with that, let's head over to today's featured film. So like I said at the top of the episode today, our featured film is Gladiator 2, the most recent Ridley Scott film. This is a sequel to his masterpiece film back in 2000, Gladiator, which starred Russell Crowe, Joaquin Phoenix. This one brings Paul Mescal to the universe, along with Pedro Pascal, who is one of my favorite actors of all time now, as well as Joseph Quinn. Connie Nielsen returns, and then we get Denzel doing Denzel things. He's really good in here. Actually was nominated for Best Supporting Actor, which is well-deserved. He was, like I said, fantastic in here as kind of the one of many villains in this film. I got a really big Spider-Man 3 vibe from this movie where we go into this movie thinking that this one person is the villain, and then about halfway through it switches over and like, nope, this is the actual villain of the film. So it was very interesting on how Ridley Scott kind of managed these multiple villains, and it was still really good. Before this film came out, even before the trailers came out, I was really against this film. I talked about it a lot in my last episode on Gladiator. That movie is so close to my heart that I couldn't imagine it ever having a sequel. I think it was a perfect film from start to finish. It didn't need to be an entire universe. Didn't need to be, sequelized. It was a perfect kind of one-off film. But then the trailer dropped for Gladiator 2, and I was all in on this. Paul Mescal looked fantastic. Pedro was incredible. Denzel was in it, which who I love. Joseph Quinn looked like a nut job in a good way. So I was in when the trailer came out. I was all in for it, and then I saw it in the theater, and it blew my mind. I liked it a lot more than I thought it would. Is it anywhere near what Gladiator was? No. Most sequels are never not in that case. And this is no exception to that. Gladiator will always be untouchable. You can do 1,000 sequels, still really good sequels. I just don't think any movie, at least in this universe, is ever going to touch what Ridley Scott was able to do in the first Gladiator film. But that doesn't take away from this. I really, really enjoyed this film. Paul Mescal is slowly becoming one of my favorite actors now. He was really fantastic in here as Lucius. I'm looking forward to seeing more of him. My boy Pedro Pascal is back doing his thing. He is just, I wasn't exactly sure what his role was going to be in this film uh, when the trailers came out. But as you start watching the film, you kind of see that he is almost like the Maximus of the film, even though um, Lucius is at the forefront. You know, he's the main character of the film. It's his story. They really kind of, at least Ridley kind of made Pedro this kind of shadow-like figure of what Maximus was. You know, Rome loved him. The citizens loved him. He was a general in the emperor's army. He stuck to his morals no matter what. He died for Rome. He died for the citizens of Rome. He had his own army outside the city ready to overthrow the emperor. So he was really kind of the Maximus of this film, which I thought was interesting. Um, I figured that they would do that with Lucius this time around, but instead Ridley Scott made the creative choice to kind of put that on Pedro's shoulders. And I think Pedro did a fantastic job doing that. He's great in anything that he does. You know, I talked about The Last of Us and and reactions earlier. He's fantastic in that show as Joel. He brings that energy here for Gladiator 2, and he's fantastic. I'm looking forward to seeing him in the Fantastic Four film as Reed Richards in the MCU. Uh, he's just an incredible actor, and I can't wait to see more of him. Denzel, fantastic. You know, Oscar-winning actor Denzel. Um, his character was interesting. What was his name? Marquinus, I think is. I terrible with these Roman names. I think it's Marquinus, something along those lines. I'll just call him Denzel for this pod because I'm gonna screw up his name. But he's really great. Very sinister when he needs to be. Very what's the best word I could do? Very cheerful when he needs to be. You know, he's he starts off as like this gladiator slave owner, kind of like Proximo in the first one. So that's kind of the role he starts off being, and then eventually he kind of goes the route of it. This is kind of like if Proximo tried to overthrow Joaquin Phoenix in the first movie. That's probably the best way to describe his character. Um, but he was really good in it. The fight between him and Lucius at the end of the film was really good. He really holds his own during those action sequences, even though Denzel's getting up in age, but he can still do some really good action scenes. I think he held his own during those scenes when he needed to. But the dialogue that he was given was really, really, really good. Um, who else was in there? Connie Nielsen returns as Lucius's mother. She doesn't get as much screen time as the first film, which is good because at the end of the day, this is still Lucius's film. This is his story. But she's really good in it, and it was really excited to see her back again. I really liked her in the first movie, and she's kind of doing her thing in this second movie. Unfortunately, she passed away, which sucks. But I think they gave her a really good death. They did it in front of Lucius, which was very powerful. Him trying to rescue her, and then at the very last second, she gets an arrow through the heart, and it was just a really good moment. And I'm really impressed with how Ridley Scott handled that, and it was really well done. And then also this time around, we got the Twin Emperors, which is double the fun, I guess. We had the first one, we had Joaquin Phoenix. Ridley Scott's like, let's kick it up a notch, and let's bring two Joaquin Phoenixes in here. One of the Emperors was played by Joseph Quinn. I need to look up the other one. I can never remember his name. Fred Henchinger is how I think you say it. I've honestly never seen him before, but he was pretty good in there. He was the one with the monkey. I thought the monkey was an interesting touch too. He was more of the, I wouldn't say like underdeveloped one, but he definitely wasn't like as adult that Joseph Quinn was. He was more. He was definitely. I think he was the younger of the twins, because we get that incredible scene where he is talking to Denzel, and he's like, and they're talking about being in the womb with Joseph Quinn's character, and about how he like tried to cut the umbilical cord to kill him in the womb so that he was the only one coming out of their mom. But they ended up both being birthed to life, and now that they're both emperors, he was okay. I mean, that's kind of a part where he could have probably casted anybody in it. I think Joseph Quinn was pretty good. He was doing his best, Commodus impersonation, but also trying to do his own thing to it. He unfortunately, gets beheaded by Denzel, and then eventually the other twin gets killed by Denzel also, and then that's how Denzel kind of rises up the ranks and becomes quote unquote emperor for a couple seconds before he eventually bites the dust by Lucius. But I think the emperors were fine. The twin thing was a really nice twist, and something different than the first film, which I'm glad they did. I'm glad that he didn't like copy and paste Commodus in there, because Joaquin Phoenix really owns that role, and I'm really glad that they didn't like get an actor and just like, here, you're Commodus 2.0. They kind of sprinkled it in with the two emperors, but also at the same time, he kind of let Joseph Quinn kind of make it its own, which I'm really glad that he did. I think if they did copy and paste Commodus, this movie would have gone south pretty quickly. Just like I think it would have been a cop out if they would have made Lucius kind of a copy and paste Maximus. I'm glad he decided to kind of make Pedro's character more of the Maximus and just kind of leave Lucius to be Lucius. I think that was a great way of making this film really, really powerful and really fun to watch. If Ridley Scott was just going to do the typical sequel way where you just copy and paste the first one, I'm just going to go and watch the first one 100 times. At least this one, he did some different tweaks to the characters, but also reminiscing on how great the first movie was. And this makes this a movie that I'm going to rewatch a bunch of times, because it's such a really fun, just a movie in general, but it's also a pretty decent sequel to Gladiator, and this is probably honestly the best version of this that we could have gotten, as far as a Gladiator sequel goes. And I'm curious to see what kind of ideas he has for Gladiator 3, because I think, again, just like the first one, this one kind of wraps it up beautifully. Lucius takes down Denzel Washington. So the emperors are basically overthrown. The Senate is in the power again. And then, yeah, Connie Nielsen passed away, so she won't be in the third one. Which is kind of weird now that I remember it. That's kind of how the first movie ended too, where the Senate goes into power after Maximus kills Commodus, and now bunch of years later, I believe this is 16 years after that first film. We have the two twin emperors, and I'm still not kind of sure on how that came to be, because at the end of the first movie, the Senate was in charge. At least that's what was the original plan with killing Commodus. So I think there's a few things that Ridley Scott needs to kind of clear up, at least for me. Um, but other than that, I think it's a pretty decent sequel. Um, the action is really fun. I love the different things that he did in this film, like the boats, which is actually a thing that happened in the Coliseum. They fill up the Coliseum with water, and they bring in these massive ships for fighting, which is really cool. We get the trailer one with the rhinos, with Paul Mescal kind of doing the dirt thing, that Maximus does in the first film, and then he hops over the rhino. It's really good action. I think my favorite one for sure is got to be the fight between Lucius and Pedro Pascal. Um, it's and when you find out that he's Lucius, he's Connie Nielsen's son, and but he doesn't know, that Pedro is actually on his side. We get to we kind of get this moment where Lucius is just seeing red, because at the beginning of the film, it enters in with Lucius in the outskirts of, I can't remember where exactly he is, if he's in some African nation or somewhere far away from Rome. Uh, Pedro's coming in with the Roman army. They're on this quest to conquer these countries. Unfortunately, Lucius's city is the next target for Pedro's army, and he kills Lucius's wife, which is a great scene where they're kind of like married to each other on the wall before this battle. She gets full of arrows after Pedro orders her to die. So now all Lucius wants is a bunch of, he just wants the general's head. I think that's another great line too. I didn't jot down any quotes this time, but I do remember that one where Denzel's kind of asking, "What does Lucius want?" And he goes, "Well, a general will do," hinting at Pedro Pascal, which is great. It was a great line delivery. We get strength and honor, which he repeats a bunch of times after watching Maximus. I'm glad they brought that line back. But I got sidetracked there. Back to the action sequences. That fight between Pedro and Paul Mescal is probably the highlight of the film for me. It really shows the one-on-one combat that they did in the Gladiators, and then just the outside story where Pedro is trying to help Lucius, but he's not listening because all he's seeing is Pedro killing his wife, and he wants revenge. So he ends up, he realizes eventually that he can't kill Pedro because his mom is married to him. But then that's when the emperor, orders like 1,000 arrows to hit Pedro, and it's such a really sad moment because you're like, crap, they finally like reconciled the differences. They were gonna join forces together to take down the emperor, and Joseph Quinn's like, nope, you're not doing it. Kill the traitor, and he gets 1,000 arrows into it, and it's really good fight. As I talk about that, I'm thinking of another scene, another trailer shot where Lucius takes the two swords and he decapitates the dude like Anakin Skywalker does in Revenge of the Sith to Dooku. I thought that was really cool. I'm glad that they kind of leaned into the blood, leaned into kind of the chaos that is the Gladiator. It's a messy business. There's blood, there's limbs everywhere, there's flesh flying everywhere. So I'm glad Ridley Scott didn't shy away from that. Honestly, he probably could have used a little bit more blood, a little more gore in this. Maybe that's something he'll explore in the third Gladiator film. Maybe they'll just go full rated, hard R with, the swearing, with the blood, the gore, that could be something. Black Hawk Down is a really good example where he did that very, very well. Kingdom of Heaven is the same one where that one's pretty bloody and pretty gory, but he did it in such a nice way that it's not like off-putting. So yeah, maybe that's something he'll explore in the third movie. Get a little more violent, a little more gory, a little more bloody. So, but yeah, overall, I'm very surprised by how much I like this movie. I'm planning on rewatching it more times. I love doing a double feature with this in the first Gladiator. I think it's a really good double feature. Get a good 5-6 hours in, especially if you watch a director's cut for the first Gladiator, which I think is about 2 hours and 50 minutes, maybe almost three. So yeah, you're looking at a good 5 hours of awesome Roman gladiator fighting. But yeah, I'm just really really surprised by how much I really enjoyed this film. So to wrap up today's episode, let's head over to the rankings. So this is a pretty easy rankings today. We have Gladiator versus Gladiator 2. Well, if you've listened to the last time episode on Gladiator, and now with what I'm what I said previously about Gladiator 2, I've got Gladiator ranked very very high above Gladiator 2. But like I said, I'm very very surprised by how much I enjoyed this film. Um, it's probably going to rise in the ranks uh, for my Ridley Scott rankings. I'll have to go through his entire filmography and figure out where this one slides. But yeah, if it's Gladiator versus Gladiator 2, I'm picking Gladiator 10 times out of 10, just because I think that's the masterpiece that Ridley Scott will be remembered for, at least to me. Um, but I'm still really glad that I didn't fully shy away from Gladiator 2. I'm glad that I gave into it, gave it a shot, and I really like Gladiator 2. So looking forward to continuing this double feature. So I'll post this ranking, even though it's a very, very short one, on the social media pages. So follow the show on X, on Facebook, Instagram. I'll also be posting some other rankings that I've done over the last couple weeks. So yeah, check that out. And then looking ahead to the the schedule, like I said earlier, I'll be releasing the Revenge of the Sith rewatch episode on May 4th. I'll also be releasing the Daredevil Born Again review, since that has finally been fully released on Disney Plus. All those episodes are out, so that'll be coming out shortly here, which I'm very, very excited for. It's one of my favorite shows of the year so far, so I'm really excited to kind of dig into uh, Daredevil Born Again. So make sure you watch all those episodes before you watch or listen to that review, because I will be spoiling everything in there. So I don't want anybody to be shocked when I start talking about things if they haven't seen the show. So and then looking ahead, I'm kind of looking through the schedule and what I want to do next. It's possibly going to be Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy. It could possibly be the Lord of the Rings trilogy. There's a couple of other ideas I'm playing for that are not on the schedule that I came up with. So just be on the look at that. I'll post that as well on the social media pages. So, and then you can watch those handles at the end of every episode. So feel free to follow, subscribe. It helps out the show a lot when you do that. And feel free to interact with the posts on there. I'll do my best to kind of look at the comments, reply back or share those comments on the show as well. So, yeah. Well, until next time, we'll see you all later.